Hi, everyone. It's Michael Carlin, president of Henry+Horne Wealth Management, with your Henry+Horne Wealth Management podcast. Today, we are extremely excited, very fortunate, very lucky to have my friend, David Guston. Now, I would like to call him Dr. David Guston. We can call him Professor David Guston. I've been encouraged to just call him Dave. Let me tell you a little bit about Dave, just to make sure you understand the magnitude of the guest that we have for you today. David is the foundation professor and founding director of the School for Future Innovation in Society at Arizona State University. And for those of you that live out here, you'll see buses that show Arizona State #1 in innovation. This is the guy. This is the guy. That's the School for Innovation. This is the guy. It's amazing. Dave is also the associate vice provost for discovery, engagement, and outcomes within the Julie Ann Wrigley Global Futures Lab. Also the principal investigator and director of the Center for Nanotechnology and Society, which is a National Science Foundation funded nanoscale science and engineering center. There's more, because you got to know about his education. It's impressive. The BA from Yale, it's awesome. But how about a PhD in political science from MIT? I'm not done. How about Harvard University postdoctoral training, Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. How do we do? Did we cover everything?
That basically gets it.
Author?
You missed the Wayne Country Day School.
No, I didn't.
In Wayne, New Jersey.
Published author. The man that knows virtually everything. So today you're listening to and you're watching us, some of you listening by podcast, watching us on video, either one or both, we're here to talk about innovation. And we're here to talk about some of the challenges and what the future of innovation looks like. There, again, is no one better for us to have this conversation with than David Guston. So I'd like to start with responsible innovation, if we could. And
Sure.
This is a topic that you really opened my eyes to, so thank you very much for that. And the way that I look at it and help educate the audience is that, in 10 years ago, responsible innovation really wasn't, it may have been around, really wasn't a thing, but now we know it's a process. It promotes creativity and opportunities for science and innovation that are socially desirable and undertaken in the public interest. And it just seems like now more than ever, we need this. We need a discussion, a really profound discussion on this, because clients and investors don't think about it, and they need to. What is it, and why do we need to think about it?
So great. Thank you for that introduction. Very generous, and thank you for welcoming me to your podcast and your video. And I really love having these discussions. It is incredibly exciting for me because, responsible innovation is more or less what I've been thinking about, quite frankly, since I mentioned Wayne Country Day School, since I was learning to read. Okay, so my favorite book when I was growing up was a book called Mike Mulligan and His Steam Shovel.
Gosh. Yeah.
And this is a book that was written during the Depression, and it's about technological unemployment. And it's about the replacement of old-fashioned steam shovels by electric shovels, and that they could dig faster and deeper and whatever. And it is really about the human consequences of technological innovation. And that's been a theme to my work all through those institutions that you mentioned from that very time I started reading Mike Mulligan. So it's incredibly exciting for me to have this opportunity to talk about this stuff. Now, responsible innovation is just one term. There are a whole other sort of terms that are surfacing, and we'll probably get a chance to talk about some more of these in the contemporary environment, that emphasizes that when we engage in knowledge-based technological innovation, when and it actually doesn't even have to be knowledge-based and technological. There's social innovation too that needs to do this. Right. We need to be thinking in a broad register, we need to be thinking about not just the consequences for us, but the consequences for other people, the consequences for a broader society about what those innovations mean. We need to take some vision of responsibility, some reflexiveness about what that intervention in the world is going to mean. We need to engage in some kind of foresight around it. And because the interventions in the world, we don't the innovations that we make, we don't have a full understanding of them. It's not the case that we know everything that we make.
Right.
And so we don't know what they're all going to do in the world. And so responsible innovation is a way of getting at that to, hopefully, on the one hand, prevent us from making some really stupid innovations that could, on the one hand, that could, if we're thinking about innovations in the private sector, they could lose us money rather than save us money. And we're all aware of plenty of attempts at marketing new things that failed.
Hmm.
It's not,
New Coke.
New Coke, Google Glass.
Google Glass,
Um,
that's right. Big one.
okay.
Yeah.
And why did Google Glass fail? Because it was creepy. That was
Yeah.
one of the reasons.
Yeah.
So we're all aware of these things that actually fail, that the market does not produce perfect innovation, but also that there are some things that are, beyond their simple return to their innovators or investors, that may be the wrong things to happen in society. Okay, so we saw a little bit of this kind of thing with the difference between how genetically modified foods were received in the United States and in Europe, and the
Right.
different kinds of responses that particular different genetically modified foods received. So responsible innovation is asking us to think in a broader register about what we're creating. And beyond that, sort of the second point is that it's also thinking about including a broader group of people in who it is that gets to innovate. So I like to think of innovation as, in part, future creation. Okay, so who gets to create the future that we all have to live in?
Right.
And right now, I dare say that if you were to, maybe look at the people who are watching this podcast, I don't want to put too fine a point on it because I'm pretty much in that demographic group too. But we're not as diverse as the rest of the country. We're not as diverse as the people who are subject to the innovations that we're creating. And if we look around and we think about what's going on with COVID now, if we think about what's going on with Black Lives Matter, we see this interrelationship between the knowledge that we have, the structures that we make, and the way that responsibility and justice are served in society. And those things often don't line up particularly well, in part because the people who are innovating are not like and don't share all the concerns with the people who are subject to innovation.
And I find that in preparation for this, and you mentioned the people that are listening, and you're right, our clients are high net worth individuals. They're educated, or this is the children of high net worth individuals who are in the middle or just completed their education, or again distributed to those folks within that network. So it is fairly homogenous. And in talking and preparing for this, it's interesting because a lot of people, and we're not going to get into the sci-fi portion, that's going to be part 2, so you'll have to watch that. But yeah, I heard a bunch of Terminator, 2001 Space Odyssey, Blade Runner, Matrix, and again, talking about having having all the diverse people in the room when creation and innovation is happening, so that technology doesn't get out of hand. Because a lot of people who are listening to this podcast in this video have that kind of understanding that innovation can and does go awry in some really awful ways in the future. And with the speed at which things are happening right now, it seems these sci-fi movies start to feel and seem more realistic and possible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give it. I can't give it away.
Yeah.
We have a whole sci-fi section, but I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
But so let's talk a little bit about the people's. They're on this kind of this wheel of desire for the new cell phone release. How much further or longer my battery go, or when can I get improved power? Apple every year has new innovations to their iPhone to drive sales. Is there inherent danger, or are there forgotten, I don't know, aspects of this evolutionary cycle that we should be talking about, that consumers should be worried about?
Well, if you think about, so here's my iPhone. If you think about this object for a little bit, that was the example that you used, but you could use lots of different specific technologies. But if you think about this, we call it an iPhone, okay? But what is it also? It's a storage device that is a huge capacity storage device compared with the things that, I grew up with. It is a camera, right? And it's a pretty high quality camera and video camera, and you can connect it in and of itself or to a computer to do photo and video production. And so then what does it become? It's not just a phone, it becomes an instrument of citizen journalism and citizen science. And there are sensors embedded in there that can do all sorts of things. I don't have to tell your listeners about the variety of things that can be done, but it can, monitor your health and report it to people. It can do all sorts of things. It can help you find constellations in the sky. There are huge kinds of things that enable a set of relationships and a set of activities that were previously not available to the people who can buy this. And so to call it a phone is, we got to call it something, but to call it a phone is to abstract from the vast network that this is connected to. And I don't just mean the cellular network, I mean the network of people and technologies that sit behind all the apps, that sit behind all the functions that's embedded in this couple $100 instrument. And if we don't think about all those networks with this piece of technology or other technologies, then we're missing something essential. And that's also what part of, responsible innovation wants to encourage people to do, wants to encourage innovators to do. You're not just innovating an object. You're innovating a connection, a node in large socio-technical networks.
Right, that's what I was
that
going to
connect different instruments and different people in different ways.
And because that's the link between and how you see society evolving, and how technology directly, just in that iPhone, is able to help evolve society. Which again, because we are, depending on when you listen to this, we completed the election. We're somewhere in the election cycle right now, but the societal evolution in technology is something that everyone's feeling, perhaps now more than ever.
Evolution is actually a great word conceptually and technically for what's going on. That there are lots of economists who belong to a branch called evolutionary economics who think in the evolutionary metaphor about how innovation happens. And in the experience that we have with technology, we see some fits and starts, this sort of, what some evolutionary biologists would call a punctuated equilibrium, where you're kind of here and then you go bloop, and then you're kind of here again, then you go bloop, okay? So it works really nicely as a metaphor, but the problem with that metaphor is that evolution is utterly impersonal. Okay, there's nobody there in the, in at least until self-conscious beings came along to root evolution along, to pick winners and losers, to say, I'd rather see you evolve in this direction than that direction, to create visions of the ends of evolution, like those sci-fi pictures might create visions of what we want or don't want. And so the evolutionary metaphor sometimes misleads us into thinking that technological change is impersonal, is driven by its own logic, rather than logics that represent what we desire and what we can do in very deep ways.
Right. That's so right. I wanted to, as we were finishing this section of the conversation, I'd love to, you and I had a really nice dialogue recently about, a little bit about the roles people play with regards to innovation from a historical perspective. I don't feel like people pay enough attention to, again, those roles. We're dancing around it, we're talking about it, but is there more that you wanted to can help us expand around that?
Yeah, so, we like to think, and I certainly won't dispute the idea that science, technology, innovation are central to our contemporary experience.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, and I already showed you my iPhone and talked about how I know that it connects me in all sorts of ways to all sorts of different people in all sorts of different capacities that are literally unprecedented. Then again, you're sitting looking at me, and on the bridge of my nose are my glasses.
Mhm.
So this is a several hundred-year-old technology
Yeah.
that is barely improved upon. Yes, I could get LASIK, but LASIK can't absolutely guarantee it's going to, correct my vision to 2020, and I'd still have to wear glasses. I got to wear glasses. I got to wear glasses.
Right.
And so the phenomenon of even knowledge-based innovation is a deeply historical one.
Mhm.
And we often don't think about what the connection between social change and technological change that's happened decades ago, centuries ago, even millennia ago. Okay, if you think about, what is it that we think about that makes us human? Well, we identify stages in the evolution of our species by the
Mhm.
tools that they made, by the materials that they used to make these tools. That may or may not be the best way to do it, but that's how we come to do it because that's what we can find in the archaeological record. So this relationship between technological change and social change and our identity as human beings is ancient. And uncovering that, recollecting that, reflecting on that at all stages makes us perhaps feel a little differently about our current moment when we think, oh God, we're surrounded by technologies. There, it's all everywhere, and this is what it means to be modern.
Right. And I can't, as you're talking, I just feel like, if social media had more forethought to it, I'm just thinking, if social media had more forethought to it, how many problems could we be avoiding? I mean,
Mhm.
isn't that what isn't right now, isn't that
Yeah.
the most pressing? Isn't that kind of what we're saying?
Yeah, no, that's, social media is a big one.
Yeah.
It's that process of forethought.
Yeah.
And, that's an ancient thing too. The Greeks had all sorts, ancient Greeks had all sorts of stories about predicting the future of prophecy and so forth.
Mhm.
And we can link them up in their different modes of failure with the kinds of ways that we approach prediction today.
Right.
So you can think about, the prophetess Cassandra,
Mhm.
who was gifted or cursed with perfect prophecy, but nobody would listen to her. And you think about that. She was the one who said, no, don't bring the horse into Troy,
Right.
from the Trojan perspective. You can think about that and think about climate change. Um,
Mhm.
there are other things, modes of prediction that you can think about. You can look around in the contemporary environment and say, okay, Nate Silver, were you making a prediction about what would happen on Tuesday? And we still don't know the answer to that.
Right.
But the point being here that foresight prediction is actually something that we desperately need to understand what happens or what might happen
Right.
after today or after now. But the idea that we say, okay, this is what the future is going to look like, and let's respond to that future is probably not the right disposition that we want. And I want people to think about a disposition toward the future that is a little bit more open, a little bit more constructive. And rather than using synonyms for seeing into the future or
Mhm.
saying what the future is going to be, predict, okay, I want people to use words like anticipate, which is about ante, that prefix there is um, is a logical and not necessarily a temporal prefix. Okay, it comes before in thinking as well as in time.
Mhm.
And the root there is about capacity making. It's about what we can do now to prepare us for a set of eventualities. So imagine if your election forecast, like Nate Silver, came with a set of scenarios that said, yeah, we think it's this percent likely that this is going to happen. But it gave you a scenario of this is what would happen if it's decided election night. This is what happens if it's stretched out over a week. This is how people are going to get anxious. This is how people are going to be in the streets. This, that would be a lot more helpful for us.
I agree. If we had enough time, we could probably fix the world's problems, you and I. We could probably do it. And I think that's one of the things I love about what you do. It seems like you are more positioned to be fixing world problems than just about anybody else that I've ever met. So no pressure.
Well,
hey,
I'm in an academic institution, okay?
no,
There are
yes,
plenty of people who have their thumbs on greater levers of power. Now, the thumb that I've got is on some students, is on some ideas, is on, quite frankly, in the university that I exist in a university that does want to think about global change and world
yes.
change and creating futures.
And Arizona State University is absolutely on the cusp of that. But it's venues like this that we're doing right now that hopefully start to open that door, because the people that are listening run businesses, starting new businesses, fixing problems in this. So I think this is the root cause. So we're watering some of those seeds right now.
Great.
And one of the ones from an investment standpoint that gets everyone all tickled pink is ESG. And if you're listening, I know you've heard of ESG. I know you've heard it, but then you're like, I don't really know what it is. This is your big chance. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. So those are three areas within which there's a lot of focus that's been placed there, and it's gotten an investment moniker that has come along with it because a lot of money's piled in there. Let me just unpack that for half a second. Blackstone's one of the largest money managers in the world. They're playing a major role here. If you go to their website, they have an entire portion of their website dedicated to ESG, reducing their carbon footprint, diversity in the workplace, inclusion, supporting veterans is another, healthcare access. There's a whole bunch of different things. And if you look at the amount of sheer dollars that have been piled into ESG, this whole section of the investment marketplace, it is absolutely parabolic. It isn't like a graph that's slowly moving higher. And I say parabolic, you've gotten to a point where it certainly doesn't come down, or doesn't come down easy. So as I look at it from an investment standpoint, to me, I'm very excited, but I assume that how do you start to tackle the concept of ESG? Maybe we'll start there, and let's start to unpack this big box.
Right. So, I think the way that it's framed, particularly the way that BlackRock extended it, I think recently is quite helpful and quite positive. That the older vision, I'll take a step sort of before that, around corporate social responsibility, was, in my view, again, okay, good for its moment, but never got beyond, being an okay kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're not engaged in sharp business practices. You take your responsibility in the community somewhat seriously. You give some philanthropy. You create a foundation that's associated with the business. You allow your employees some community service time. Those are sort of some of the markers of corporate social responsibility in those ways. You extend it a little further, but where is it that vision of doing good in the world connects with the things that are fundamental to the core organization? Okay, how does it connect? And this is part of what environmental, social, corporate governance is about, in part. How does it connect with the way you treat your workers, the way you treat folks who are not just your workers, but workers across your supply chain? How is it that you think about, and now here's the connection really to innovation, how is it that you think, if you're an R&D performing organization, how is it that these values connect to the research that you're doing to support the innovations that you're bringing into the world? So this is another element of responsible innovation. How do you connect your ideas?
Right?
Yeah.
Aren't values just ignored? I shouldn't say that
Yeah.
blanket, but we
Well,
see that in business a lot. It's dollars and cents. It's profit and loss.
it's profit and loss. Now, some folks are thinking hard about things like the Sustainable Development Goals and
Oh,
bringing
right.
them into business models.
Yes.
Um, I've got colleagues here at ASU who are working with Mitsubishi Chemical Holdings Corporation.
Yes.
Okay, not Mitsubishi Electronics, but another big Mitsubishi.
Yeah.
And they're working on a concept that Mitsubishi generated called kaiteki, which denotes in the original Japanese the sort of health and well-being, but it connotes a broader health, well-being, and sustainability across generations.
Yeah.
And it's based on the idea that that Mitsubishi has come to understand, very much like the BlackRock and like the Business Roundtable, which now is talking about stakeholder value and not just shareholder value, that large firms are not going to survive and prosper in the future if they cannot demonstrate that they're producing public value in addition to private value.
Right.
And we don't know how to do that. There's a great knowledge problem there. We don't easily know how to demonstrate what contribution to public value looks like. And so that's why we as a research institution are partnering with them. But we share this vision that even the private sector, even large private sector actors, are going to have to think about how public value is produced.
And it's that
And that's
partnership.
kaiteki.
Yeah, but it's that partnership that you just spoke about. That's why you're fixing the world. That's why you're fixing the world. That's why you're doing it. But that's it just, so I guess what we're also saying is that, encouraging business to reach out to institutions like ASU, your department at ASU, so that there is additional attention paid to responsible innovation, right? Not innovating in a vacuum. I look at a lot of new business startups. I get them all the time, which is great, and I love to do it. And clients am I gonna make money doing this? And that really, and for a long time, it's just been my central focus. But wouldn't it be great if every single one of these business plans came with their ESG component, came with how they were going to be doing things better? Just isn't
And
enough. You need to partner with we'll start with Arizona, every business in Arizona, and then we'll work our way out. Sound reasonable?
sure.
One at a time. So, but how do you break the link to this conundrum? So let's say one of my clients is listening right now and they say, this is hogwash, because you get people like this in a room, and then there's so much concern about what the product's going to do and all the social implications. And then they would say to me, well, then the car's never going to be invented, because in that case, how can you invent the car if it's going to kill tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people over time? Look what it does to the environment. Oh, the law of unintended consequences, ESG. You don't have the car. So how do we break that link? Because
I love the car example because it is so rich and it's also so loaded. Okay,
yes.
so when you ask that question, you're asking a question about something that almost every American has and almost every American loves.
Yeah.
Okay, so first, if you think sort of globally, yes, lots of people around the globe love their cars. A whole lot of people don't have them and survive perfectly nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Some people aspire to have them. Some people's cars are a whole lot different than our cars,
Yeah.
even if American companies or American originated companies like Ford were making them. So, during the period of our lives, Ford was making an entirely different auto line for the crowded cities of Northern Europe
Right.
than for the wide open spaces of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we might have had entirely different kinds of outcomes
Mm-hmm.
if Ford had been able to do something differently faster in the U.S. environment. So the question is very loaded in that way. Another thing that one of the reasons why the question is so great is, okay, imagine if you were sitting in 1896 or 1898 or 1904, and those dates actually really matter, because the technological options for what you were doing then still had some openness to them. And the way historians have looked at that period, there were options that involved electric cars. There were options that involved cars that were more easy for women to use compared to men using.
Mhm.
There were a whole set of these other sort of this other social freight that was put into what a car came to be, that if we had just reflected for a little bit longer
Mhm.
and a little bit more robustly and a little bit more anticipation, with a little bit more anticipation, we might have ended up down a pathway that would have looked a little healthier than one in which there are, whatever it is, 250 million automobiles in the streets of the United States, on streets that, funded by the federal government, cleaved our city communities into two and put people on the wrong side of interstate highways
Mhm.
and destroyed livelihoods in that way and contribute to the destruction of the climate. So what might those other options have looked like? And can't we, even if, it doesn't, this framework doesn't say don't. This framework just doesn't say yes. It says how to best, how should we?
Right.
It doesn't necessarily say no.
Can we, so then, so then does this, okay. So if human error contributes to aggressive driving, which contributes to more fossil energies being used and distributed and pushed out into the atmosphere, it also contributes to user error, driver death, passenger death, all of that stuff. So are we saying, like, just for example, that maybe that we should be focused more on driverless technology? We should be, if we're trying to
So,
make the,
yeah.
we got it, or is that not quite?
No, I mean, there's a great argument to be made,
Yeah.
and a great argument being made about the safety of driverless vehicles, about automated vehicles. Hasn't been demonstrated yet.
Right.
It's hard to think about how that gets demonstrated other than through a whole lot of millions and millions and millions of miles driven. So, almost literally right around the corner here was where a pedestrian fatality in an autonomous
And
vehicle accident
Tempe,
happened
yeah.
here in Tempe, Arizona,
Yeah.
and it caused Waymo to do a whole lot, different things. One of the reasons they came to Arizona was we provided them with a less intensive regulatory structure for testing their stuff on public streets than did California. But it's also the case, and here's where that embedded in a network issue comes into play incredibly importantly. Now, if you think about the model, that vision of the future, what we sometimes in my field use an accessible piece of jargon to call an imaginary. What is the imagination we have about how something works? And what is it connected to? This imaginary for autonomous vehicles is that they're sort of circulating around and they pick you up when you want. You don't have to own your car. You don't have to pay for your garage.
Mhm.
And it's sort of like, and it's, connected to this, so I can connect to Uber or Lyft, and they've got an autonomous vehicle. So, not only are these people not real employees as opposed to
Yes.
consultants, and
California, yes, the
we
California
could
folks.
talk about the ballot initiative in California, but they're not even there anymore.
Right.
Okay, they're just a way station
Yeah.
for what is going to go on with autonomous vehicles. And you can think about getting rid of parking spaces in your inner city areas, so you don't have to waste street space on parking space. There are a whole lot of great things that these things can do. Like you said, eliminate driver error. I mean, you don't have to plan for parking that goes along with your construction. Whole lot of wonderful things. Well,
Some of that's, yeah. Go
if you get that transition
ahead.
before you get a robust transition to EV, to electric vehicles, think about what that does to climate.
Right.
You've now put all your cars on the road all the time,
Mhm.
circulating, not sitting around in a, and so, nobody has really thought through what the full climate implications of these things in constant motion might be.
Mhm.
And then that, think about the life cycle, okay, and then you have, there are a whole lot of things that have to be thought about to make that imaginary really work responsibly.
And it seems that Elon Musk, with his latest announcement with the battery, his battery summit that he had recently, where he was able to find ways to get the rare earth elements out of batteries, had both a a profit incentive. It had an environmental incentive. Given where some of those rare earth materials are sourced from, there's a social, it seems to hit on every level.
Yep.
So, I mean, are we going to champion him?
So that's,
Yeah.
but just to show, even more complex than that, though, is that, the conditions for the people who are mining those rare earths tend to be pretty crummy. Okay. But at the aggregate level in those countries that are producing the rare earths, the income is a significant kind of income. And if it's withdrawn, there are other kinds of consequences.
Right.
So that connection through the supply chain, and that's where we go back to, the Kaiteki vision or the environment and governance stuff, that vision of what the corporation is doing when it's making these decisions needs to be extended. It can't simply be, okay, I'm aware of the conditions of people who work at the very beginning of my supply chain, and that they're, and if I get rid of rare earths and what I'm producing, then I can I don't have to worry about them and their crappy conditions in the mines. Well, but you've also deprived them of their livelihoods. That's not to say that you should keep the rare earths to keep them working at, $1 a day in the mines. But you've got to make that connection robust one way or another.
So business leaders, are you hearing Dave Guston? Are you hearing him loud and clear that it isn't enough to just invest in ESG? And I'm on the board of a solar company, and I certainly believe in solar. I believe in what that means in a lot of different ways that we produce and consume energy in the future. But what Dave's saying, that there's a ripple effect that needs to be paid attention to, just over, above, and beyond when you're bringing new innovations out to your company, to your organization, for your consumers. And this should be the same kind of expectation that you'd have on the business leaders that you're investing in. Oh, how was that? That was a pretty good sum up, I thought. Well, how would you add?
That was a great, and just let me add. So one of the private sector folks that I interact with in my role as director of my school is the sort of chief of innovation from the British Standards Institute. Okay. And BSI is involved in the production of standards and the certification of standards in the private sector. And as everybody who are your listeners probably know, standards are a great example of public-private, non-hierarchical organization that helps create public value. Right. Okay, because it's a value to everybody that our camera film has the same speed and that our screwdrivers fit into the screw heads and things of that sort. I participated in, it wasn't an ISO standard, but it was a publicly available specification that BSI did for responsible innovation. If you're interested, it's PAS 440. It was released this past February. And it talked about what small and large firms could actually do, particularly if they were dealing with things like emerging technologies, to try to behave in a more responsible fashion toward that innovation. And it involves some of the things that we've been talking about. It's getting more and different kinds of people around the table. It's setting up a process that you can engage in more systematic anticipatory action around what it is that you're doing, and thinking about the breadth of extent of those ripple effects that you're engaged in when you innovate.
Or, what you could do? You could donate some low basis stock to ASU and direct it to the Innovation Center. You can direct it to David's group. So that way you can help make the world and businesses a better place. Hey, we finished part one. I say we do this again right now for part two. I'm going to wear the same clothes. I didn't bring a second set. So let's go ahead. And again, I thank you all for tuning in. This has been David Guston. I'm Michael Carlin. We are here to help you learn a little bit more about and think a little bit more deeply about the way you invest and the way you think about investing. So this has been great. Thank you all so much. Take care and have a great day. Thank you, David. Material on this program is intended for general information only and should not be taken as specific investment, tax, or legal advice. None of the information contained in this broadcast is intended by the host to be a solicitation for sale of any security. Further information is available by contacting Henry+Horne Wealth Management. Securities offered through Independent Financial Group, member of FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Wealth Management LLC, DBA Henry+Horne Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. Henry+Horne Wealth Management and IFG are separate and unrelated entities. Henry+Horne and Henry+Horne Wealth Management are separate entities, member of FINRA and SIPC.